You also spoke about something earlier. I wanted to ask you, Angela, about like data and how there could be some challenges or there might be some occasional anomalies and errors. Do you have any examples, like any personal examples of like where you've like seen a mistake in like the data that you were reviewing or like a project that you might have been working on and and you said, you know what, this doesn't really quite look right, even though the numbers seem to be right. For whatever reason, the output just isn't outputting right now. You know what I mean? Like, do you have any examples? And can you share with us like how you were able to overcome some of those challenges?
I will say with every migration or integration, there's always an anomaly or there's always going to be errors. In my experience, I like to continue to work with the data to be able to ensure quality. So I have probably a million experiences. One of my most challenging, I would say, in organization is really with data, scattered data across different systems. And I would say one of my most memorable experiences, we were going live for Snowflake. We were in the middle of a migration. And one of that experience is really just, and there was a specific target date to go live. And there are some always concerns with any type of migration. So with data, there are some challenges. So I would traditionally have a war room with my engineers and QA. So I would normally have a QA team that also do the validation and ensuring the quality of the data. So we took some time to work together and cross collaborate, and it really comes down with having a great team as well, because you're leading different programs and products. You're just one person. It's really about having a great team that you could work with, engineers that's going to do because they're the ones who are mining this data, right? And there are some hiccups, but we were able to go live and finish that migration. And I will say that's probably one of my most memorable experiences. Um, and we also, at the end of the launch, we were able to be acknowledged for one of the most quality data for that platform. And so that was a great experience, but it was one of the most challenging experiences because it was multiple integrations for multiple systems, and it was a large data set, and it was just a large amount of data, and it's inconsistent. And sometimes there are just fragments of just different, just it's not necessarily conveying over the right. Um, it's the input was not as consistent as we would need it to be, because what we will also do is do the data ingestion, and then just and the encryption and things of that nature. So before we can do that, the data, it had to be clean data. So, and sometimes inputting clean data can be a bit of a challenge, right? So working with the data engineers, we were able to successfully clean this data up and create different coding to be able to align with the expectations once it's coming into the system, that we were able to ensure some compliance, PII, privacy, just ensuring that we're protecting the data. We are aligned with compliant governance and compliance, because of course, that's a huge factor as well. Having clean data is one thing, but then also ensuring that the data compliance and governance, that we're aligning with that as well, is another. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a key point of a discussion and really even a whole nother TikTok in itself, like the governance and compliance aspect of data. I was actually one of my former roles as a senior product manager. I was a part of a governance and compliance regulatory team, and one of my jobs and responsibilities was to make sure that we were bringing in the proper data or the right data from about 50 or so different delivery teams. And I was using a tool called SQL, and I was essentially like building out like roadmaps and frameworks based off of the source of record from these delivery teams. But I would use SQL to essentially build out the reporting platforms for each of these different teams. But these are global teams, so I had about over, it was over about 60 or so different markets, and the data coming from each of the different teams were not very consistent. It wasn't consistent platforms. Every I mean, a product that we were working on in the U.S. wasn't the same as the one that we were, using in India
Right.
or in the UK and so forth. So that was like one of my key roles and responsibilities, to make sure that I would take that data, like in a platform called Confluence, and essentially I would bring that into to Rally or Jira, and create like these product roadmaps and plans to kind of create a story, or tell the story for each of those product teams. Basically, letting them know when we'd have a product ready to launch, whether it was a servicing email campaign or a marketing email campaign. I had to make sure that that data was clean. So yeah, that's a big role. That's a big role. The governance and compliance, and a lot of companies are being impacted by by just what we would think as maybe something simple, but a zero or one, or missing, or a misplaced decimal point, so it could make the difference on whether or not a company gets fined or not. So yeah, that's
Right.
definitely an area that I had some experience in, and yeah, learned a lot of like core lessons learned. But yeah, that's pretty cool. That I mean, you've got a lot of really like great thoughts, and with regards to that topic. You know I guess one of the other things that I was thinking about from the data perspective is as I was thinking about, was like, when, like as I was discussing before, data sets, and large data sets. And like, what is a simple way, or what is a more simplified way to analyze, like large sources of record? And so like, one of the things that I do is I try to follow generally, and this doesn't look exactly the same for every project, or that you're working on, but I use a like what I call a DCS framework. It's like a simple data framework, which starts with defining your data, comparing data, and doing your proper stress testing of data, before I submit or initialize, for final results. So basically, the define stage, like, kind of is basically, what do we really want to get or learn from this data? Like, what are our key metrics
Right.
for for pulling this data? Um, and how do we measure this data? I think just from a personal standpoint, like, you know, I remember when I was going through the home buying process for the first time, and I remember, like, if you want to look at like cost of living indexes, and things like that, like,
Mhm.
is usually something key when you're moving from state to state. And I've done quite a bit of that, way too much moving. But one of the things that I would always check on, when I was moving to it, or looking at a different city or state, is the cost of living index. How much money am I going to need, or is the money that I'm earning at my company now going to leverage me for the lifestyle that I am looking to live, in another city or state? And so that's one of the key things that I would always look at, in addition to, like, quite a few other things. But I would say defining that data, and like really like understanding, like, what do I want to get out of that, was one of the first things. I'd say the second thing, for me, is like comparing the data and comparing what my options are. So if I want to buy, which I'm nowhere close to that, but if I want to buy my first like $1 million home, you know, um, what is my data telling me? My data may be telling me that, oh, you can only afford, maybe about, hey, a cool 150, 200,000, and this is the Atlanta, coming out right now from, obviously, we're both Atlanteans, natives or what have you, but I live in
Right.
Jersey now. But that was one of the key things that I had to kind of figure out is the income that I'm making here in Atlanta going to translate when I moved to Jersey. I moved to Jersey in 2021, 5 years ago, and I realized there was a very very sharp difference in the cost of living index in Atlanta, Georgia versus Manhattan, New York. Obviously, I think everybody knows that. So I had to really figure out some things, Angela. I had to really figure out, okay, like it's showing this on paper, but am I going to be living in a, in a shack, because I can't really afford, the cost of living, here, that was a real thing to me. So I had to figure out how do I leverage that data. So I just think about like that as a real like general example of like how you want to take data and you want to define it, but then you also want to do data comparisons. Like I said, if I can't afford the $1 million home, maybe I can look at a intermediary home in between zero to $1 million, and maybe let's say 250. Just for cool even numbers. $250,000 home in Atlanta. That wouldn't really work in New York and New Jersey, but let's say we were looking at that as a secondary option, and then we might have another option somewhere in the middle between those two. So you can take the data, understand like what makes sense, what kind of makes sense, and then what doesn't make sense at all. And then you go through your extraction layers and just and I think of it like if you look at a spreadsheet, for example.
Mhm.
I use filters for a lot. I love filters. You have to be able to filter your data and extract what's important versus what you don't really need to to know, or you really don't want to pull out in your overall analysis and assessments. And then once you do that, you do the stress test. That's basically an exercise that I use on data to figure out like what is the downside with with this option, with option A versus the downside between option B and option C. And you can also look at the upsides as well too. But essentially, like with when it comes to stress testing, you want to figure out like if excuse my French, but if ish it's the fan, like will my business survive? Will like I think about that even with my company,
The
that
market.
I've just launched. What is how can I ensure that my company will survive the high price of gases? We're going through this war and things of that nature, so the prices of gas have gone up incrementally. You look at the having to pay for parking. Where I live, it's $250 a month for parking. Like how do I adjust for that? If I'm moving from out of state, like in a southern or midwestern state or somewhere that doesn't really have to require having to pay for monthly parking fees. You do stress tests on that data and figure out like what could work, what absolutely would work versus what would not work, and then you find ways to parse out the data that doesn't work, or you parse out the options that do not work, and hopefully that based off of that you'll be able to have some clear options that'll give you a good decision making process to make a decision on the new home that you want to purchase. And I think for me, when if in case you're wondering, as far as like how did what was the end result to that configure that data analysis that I did, it worked out for me. I ended up landing a home that was well within my price range.
Mhm.
I got a very good low interest rate on the home. I got a 30-year fixed. And even though I have like since moved from that home because I'm living here in New York, New Jersey now, I was able to kind of profit off of it as an investment, as I've had tenants in the home for for the last 4 years. I just think about those things when you're analyzing data. You want to figure out a way to like really define or figure out what are your key metrics that you want to pull. You want to be able to compare and have some options for your, for your data, or at least the output for the data that you're looking to, share. And then you want to stress test and figure out, is this data going to allow me an option that's going to allow my company or my project to get an A plus plus grade, or allow my business to win? Am I going to be in the green, or am I going to be in the red at the EOY end of year? And that's how I like to use data. When it comes to like my life, my business projects that I'm working on, and also my professional endeavors as well.
That's really good. I totally agree. So with purchasing my home, I did the exact same thing. I did basically an analysis of the neighborhoods, what part of town, based on the school systems, crime rate, and using that data to drive my decision, as well as because I bought my property in a time where the market was, where it was down, and so then I was able to purchase a property that has equity into it. So over time, it continued to grow based on that data, and that has allowed me to be successful in, because I'm still here. So it has allowed me to gain some equity based on early on decisions in that data. So I totally agree with everything you're saying when it comes to utilizing data, even with real estate. I use data in probably too much in my personal life, but just making sound decisions, quantifying everything, even down to relationships. I use data based on that. I put scorecards on everything. uh, but on for work, I would traditionally do that. Create dashboards. Analyzing specific data sets, different platforms based on different scopes. Because I know that you were discussing earlier with narrowing the scope and telling the story with your data when it comes to business, and aligning that to be able to make that storytelling for the product roadmap that you were creating. So that does help with creating sound decisions when you're moving forward, or especially for senior leaderships, because that's what they look at. They want to see the data. What is the data? What is the data telling? Right? What are the risks? What are the risk mitigation plan, or like how we're going to manage this, or even the future, future estate they're planning with the data. What does that look like? What is the security state of the environment, the vulnerability? What does that scorecard look like? Is it at risk? Is it not? How is that adjusting throughout the platform? So I totally agree with everything that you're saying.
Yeah, 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 definitely, definitely. So now that we've talked about data, we've talked about AI, and again, I love like the real life like applications and examples that you're sharing in the workplace, and personally as well too. Um, Now I want to kind of switch gears a little bit into like you know platforms, or applications, like and so maybe for those on the call that may not be as familiar with it, can you just share like what do you like, how would you describe platforms, or platform strategies? Like what does that mean to you? Because and the reason I ask this before you answer is because we all come from so many different environments, and to be very honest, I've been in engineering, and project management throughout my whole career. But in every job and like line of work that I've had, or every role that I've had, it looks different. The platforms look different. The strategies that I've used different. So like, what does it look like in your space, Angela?
In my space, in my previous position, I will say multiple platforms, covering between broadcasting platforms, international LATAM, centralized data platforms, infrastructure, some of the larger platforms, and building that out from scratch. So, what I mean by building out an infrastructure, it could be processing, data, Snowflake, just a layer of tech stacks, tech stacks between, and this is going to help aggregate and store that data. So primarily building out the technology that's going to be able to house that data, right? And then as well as the systems that will sit on top of that for business users, like for Tableau or Sales, just other systems that will be able to help partner with telling it, extracting that data for the business users, or even like data bricks, um, airflow for operations, AWS. That was a huge one. That AWS was one of our, I would say, primary systems that we would use for, we would pair with Snowflake. So there's quite a bit of, for me, there's a multiple tech stacks for just my day to day, and in managing overall just multiple platforms and systems. But I would say, for a personal standpoint, that's a great question, because I would, sometimes you can get so consumed of your, like, your business and work life, that sometimes you don't really recognize the different platforms you're using on a personal level. I would say, like, for technology, personal level, of course, there's, like we were speaking about earlier, like a ChatGPT, Claude, um, oh gosh, Gemini. So there's for personal, I tend to stick with the same systems, but for business, you always have to continue to grow and expand, learn new systems, new methodologies, and align with that, with, how does that work for the business, and how would that report up, or how does it align and interact with the other systems. So maybe that's a bit too techy, but how does it work for you, in regards of your space?
Um, I would say that, like, for the business, for Metro Elite, um, I've been um, I've been like really like working through some a couple of different platforms, but one is kind of a platform that I'm trying out called Slick Text, and basically it's like an AI powered like SMS like marketing message platform that kind of automates like customer like targeting messages. So I'm very new. It's kind of in its infancy right now, but basically what I'm looking to do is like I have like the point of sale that I mentioned before. I've got like my own like office space set up, like, and what I mean, like my digital office space where I have like the 1-800 numbers, and like you can call the number like now and it'll give you the prompts and the messaging to my business, hey, welcome to Metro Elite, concierge and transport, happy to serve you, blah blah blah. And it actually starts to ask questions to you, similarly to like how ChatGPT would ask follow up questions after you submit, a question in the cube bar. It will ask the person that's calling in questions like, "What do you need? How can I help you?" And then you may say, "Hey, I am flying into the city, into New York City today, and I want to go to the upcoming Yankees game for the first time. Do you have any support services that can assist you?" And then the prompt actually through Slick Text will answer, and it will let you know that yes, we have I have a driver that's available and ready for your services, and he can be to you within this time frame. And then I may say, or the prompt will say, how many passengers will be needed for your service. And so there's this like back and forth, kind of like engagement process that Slick Text offers through the platform. So that is really really cool. I've tried it. I've called myself, so I've heard the messaging, and it's almost like using ChatGPT just like in live interface, or like in live in real time if you're leaving messages. And then what happens after you leave that message, I get I get the message in my inbox, and it summarizes like what the caller was requesting, like the needs, and it tells me exactly like what services that I need to offer. So, and that's all through the platform, through Slick Text, and through Qo is the telephone automation system that I use. So yeah, just that alone, it helps me it saves me on time. It saves me on like having to get a personal assistant, or even thinking about a personal assistant one day in case, as I scale up and get more drivers and get more more vehicles for transport and so forth, or just doing personal concierge services. So That's one real cool tool that I've been using. And then I would say like yeah, that's probably one of the biggest um, kind of tools that I've been able to use as far as platform strategies. And I would say in the future, I'd like to also get more involved from the funding perspective, because they have a tool called SBG funding right now that works with small businesses and helps small businesses to grow and like kind of guide, like throughout that whole AI ML like process is as far as like when you're looking to scale your business up or you're looking to scale a brand new business, no matter what city, state, or country that you're in. So, and basically it tells you what your affordability is. Like, can we afford to launch this business or not? So yeah, I like to use SVG funding, from that standpoint, as far as like scaling my business up.
That's awesome. So in actuality, they're using existing data to be able to provide a story and provide like a predictability what the potential consumer may be interested in, like the type of services, as well as for the financial support. So they're using a way of they're aggregating this data to be able to provide that predictability or tell a story. You as a business owner, that where you can user targeting those consumers, like for your actual business. So that's really good because over time they can gather that information. And once they gather that information, you'll have historical data on your personal clients. And then you'll be able to have a little bit more narrow in scope on what they're looking for and what their ask may be based on historical data. Because they're an existing client, right? And over time, that will continue to build. So that's really great. That predictability and using data to align with that and AI.
Yeah.
Creating a chat box and that interactive could sometimes be challenging for some companies. And they
Yes.
don't, yes, it's a challenge for a lot of companies. They don't know how to use that data to be able to tell that story, to create um, that ability to be able to support. Because if you ever notice in some companies, you may call and that support, those phone calls
Hmm.
or messages, or when you're logged in, it may not be, you're like, oh my God, just let me speak to someone.
Hmm.
It's not
Exactly.
really helping, right? They
Yeah.
just, so that your platform, what was that again? The platform that you're using?
SPG funding was with regards to getting the financial capital that I'm going to need to scale my business up, and Slick Text
Slick Tech.
is kind of like Slick Text. Yeah, that's kind of like the SMS marketing platform that I'm using.
Awesome. So that's almost similar to a CRM as well, but it's a little bit more advanced opposed to just a traditional CRM.
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. That's great.
So I know that we've got some inquiry minds out there, that want to maybe ask some questions here. And so I'm looking in the chat here. I'd like to go ahead and maybe ask one of the questions that I see here from one of our guests, and his name is Richard. Thanks, Richard, for joining in. So Richard's question is: Good evening. With the rapid pace of open source innovation, it is a strategic mistake for enterprises or entrepreneurs to lock themselves into a single cloud provider's AI evidence right now. Is it a strategic mistake for enterprises or entrepreneurs to lock themselves into a single cloud provider's AI evidence right now? Julia, what are your thoughts to Richard's question here?
Personally, it really just depends on the restrictions and the limitations that the platform provides. If it's a platform that has a large amount of data that's really expandable and it probably more narrow in scope and what your expectation, what your product and what you're looking to align with, it really just depends. So shopping around or just ensuring that the right platform works for you, I would say that's primarily, but AI alone is a great partner to have, to be able to utilize and then to, using different cloud providers. I don't think it will lock you in too much. It really just depends on how your point of view and your perspective, right? Because I could look at AI and cloud providers as, for me, it has been able to, I've had a great experience with it, right? I've had a great experience with AI, a great experience with cloud, because each platform will provide a different story, and it has a specific scope of work, right? Or what you're utilizing it for. So it really just depends. But I don't think, me personally, I wouldn't think that it would be a mistake. It really just depends on if you're using the wrong system for the wrong use case, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great question, Richard. That's yeah, I've recently had an experience, with a large organization where I came into the door with having to get used to multiple different AI platforms. And we also had our custom, platform as well that we were, or a couple of different custom platforms that we were managing. So I'd say probably, I don't want to give the wrong number, but it was definitely well over 6 or 7 like platforms that we were like navigating at the same time. In addition to our own custom, AI tool. And what I found is that it was very confusing initially, but so it was kind of like there was a means to an end, even though it was a lot of churn, from the very beginning of that process of using multiple different AI platforms. I think the end, like one of the end results is that it was able to help us build out, that internal platform, that customized platform that was pulling prompts and pulling like outputs from each of the other, core commingled systems. And so like we were almost, kind of creating like our own like monster, platform, with the help of all of these various data sources coming in. So there definitely is a burn and churn process when it comes to like using all the different platforms. Now, I also have been with companies that only just use one platform, and it was seamless because everybody was using the same thing. But the problem with that, I hate to use the word problem, but the challenge with that is that we were limited. We were just very, very limited in the outputs that we were able to put out. And so it got old over time. And so, like you mentioned in your question, with the fast pace of our industry, you have to like move really, really, really quickly, and you can't just keep doing the same old things and using the same old tried and true platforms and think you're going to be good for the next like 2 3 years or even the next 2 or 3 months. So in those cases, especially if you're like a startup, yeah, you definitely want to try out like different platforms, to as you scale up your enterprise. So those are just my thoughts.
And I agree with you because technology is growing so rapidly these days. Um, from the front end and the back end side, you have to stay up to date with the market, with the updates, with the products, and just ensuring that it does align with what you're looking to do. Because, like you said, when there's a new product that comes out or a new technology or a platform, it may be more aligned with what you're looking to, what you're looking to accomplish. And then when a traditional like one platform or one system, like in your previous example, Rodney, is that it was really narrow. There was no flexibility. There was no way to really scale from that because that was the only system that you guys had.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't know if Richard is actually live and on the call. I want to maybe see if we can open up the floor, possibly to Richard, just as a follow up. And if not, I may like to go to one more question that we have from Des coming up. So Richard, are you there by chance? And would you like to speak on anything that we've discussed? Okay, Richard may not be on. So let me go to the next question from Des. So he says, I just finished a certification in AI. I work at a large tech firm now and leveraging it daily. Understanding how quickly AI is advancing, what best practices would you recommend to stay industry relevant slash ready both now and throughout the next 3 year horizon? Good question, Des. Yeah,
Question.
kudos to you for finishing up your certification in AI, and also for your ability to transition here into working to a large tech firm. Um, my advice is maybe consider like just like not just getting the certification and not using those tools that you've learned through the course or through the training, but finding ways to use those the things that you learn. I know that there may not always be applicable opportunities that you will have in the workspace, for like working on projects like that, but I would always say take a look into like maybe your own nonprofit, like maybe starting up a small nonprofit. Not that you have to do exactly like I did, but that was one example where I've been able to use it and grow and scale really quickly. But you may also be able to use those AI skills in the nonprofit sector, like as a volunteer. Like maybe joining a committee. Shameless plug here, but NSBE NYC professionals here. We're always excited to bring on new talent, and we'd be love to have your skills and in AI that you've been able to use, and we love for you to kind of maybe consider volunteering and supporting us, or any other organization of your choice. So those are kind of my thoughts. What about yourself, Angela?
Agree with everything that you're saying. Congratulations again. AI is a rapidly growing space, and I would say trying to use AI in different types of roles, or how does it based on what your future goals within your career. So if you're looking to progress as a senior leadership or more into technology or specifically in AI, what part of AI? Because AI can, you know, it could be more on the infrastructure side, it could be on the cloud side, big data side. So it really just depends. So, and once you know exactly where you're looking to go within your career, then trying to be more relevant is staying networking, like you said, within different organizations like NSBE, or going to other networking events as well, and partnering with them, and just trying to stay relevant with different products outside of just the AI, just other products that can expose you into other avenues, right? So it really just depends on where you're looking to go with your career, and because AI is such a broad term, right? Because AI is everywhere. So it really just depends on where you're looking to go with your career, and how to stay relevant is just staying consistent with, because certifications and new products are launched every quarter and every year. So the certifications we may have complete that I've taken personally 3 years ago, 2 years ago, they've already refreshed with new ones this year. So staying consistent, it's almost like being in the medical industry, where every year you have to stay relevant, take certifications just to stay in that medical industry. So, yeah, or an insurance agent, you have to stay relevant every year and just ensuring take those certifications and take that ongoing learning education. So
Yeah,
that's my
definitely, and just remember too, as quickly as AI is advancing, just remember like one of the key points that I brought up earlier is that even though the technology may be advancing, the end result of what you were able to bring to the table to your companies and to your organizations, that still remains consistent. So don't just always remember that, it's not always about the nook and cranny tool that you used in AI or that you learned. It's the end result, and that made you the most valuable, or that made you a valuable player on your team, or the key player on your team. So yeah, just always remember that, and keep practicing, and also join those discussions. There are lots of like tech talk similar to what we may have here now, or different focus groups. Join a focus group on AI, and keep the discussion going. You have to keep the conversation going and live and thriving, and just don't leave it sitting dead, like on a, not, I don't mean dead, but don't just leave it sitting on a resume, on a paper, and not actually bring it to real life. Actually join those discussions, join those focus groups, and kind of lead in that discussion. And so,
And I totally agree with that because, like you said, AI is really our partner. We are we are leading AI based on what we're inputting into AI. That success that you have is your success, and telling that story through that resume and having that ability to be able to leverage that, and having AI as your partner, not necessarily leading with that as your success, because you are the success.
absolutely, absolutely, Angela. Well, wow. Can you believe it? Wow, the time is up. It is 7:30 on the dot. I just wanted to say thank you. Thank all of you for joining us on our inaugural NSBE NYC Tech Talk. Thank you for joining myself, Rodney Williams, and Angela Thomas here. We look forward to speaking with you, and working with you all on future projects and endeavors in the future. And hope to see you guys at future NSBE NYC professional events, and maybe even at conference next week. But yes, it's definitely been a pleasure, and we will look forward to chatting with you guys for our Q2 discussion coming up next quarter. But until then, keep staying focused in your field, and we'll look forward to chatting with you guys next time. So until then, have a good one.
Good evening.